The lights came on for the first time in 50,000 years. Deep beneath mountains that no longer had a name, ancient machines began to hum and whir and click. Dust that had settled over millennia trembled as power surged through cables older than any civilization in the known galaxy. Warning lights flashed red, then yellow, then green as systems checked themselves one by one. Commander Elara Vance was the first to wake. Her eyes opened to darkness, then to dim blue light. Her lungs burned as she drew breath, and the air tasted stale and recycled and wrong. She tried to move, but her muscles screamed in protest. 50,000 years of sleep had turned her body into something fragile and weak. Revival sequence complete, a mechanical voice announced. Welcome back, Commander. Current date, unknown. External conditions, unknown. Status of human civilization, unknown. Elara coughed and gasped and forced herself to sit up. The cryopod around her hissed open and cold vapor spilled onto the metal floor. She looked around and saw rows upon rows of pods stretching into the darkness, each one containing a sleeping human, each one waiting for the signal to wake. 10,000 souls. 10,000 survivors of a dying world. 10,000 reasons to keep fighting. She remembered why they had done this. She remembered the sun growing angry and red, swelling larger each year, cooking the oceans and burning the forests. She remembered the desperate plan, the ARC program, they had called it. Dig deep into the earth, build vaults that could survive anything, and sleep until the danger passed. But had it passed? Had anything survived? Elara pulled herself out of the pod and stumbled toward the control room. Her legs shook with every step, but she forced herself forward. The Ark had been designed to wake them when conditions became safe again, but something felt wrong. The air recyclers groaned with effort, and several lights flickered in ways that suggested damaged systems. She reached the main console and pressed her palm against the scanner. The screen lit up with data that made no sense at first. Then she understood, and her heart nearly stopped. 50,000 years. They had slept for 50,000 years. The sun had not killed them. The Ark had worked exactly as designed. But 50,000 years was far longer than anyone had expected. What had happened to the world above? What had happened to the stars? Elara activated the external sensors, and what she found changed everything she thought she knew. Signals. Thousands upon thousands of signals flooding every frequency. Radio waves and laser pulses and energy patterns she could not even identify. The universe was alive with communication, with voices calling out across the void. They were not alone. They had never been alone. But where were these signals coming from? Elara traced their origins and found sources scattered across hundreds of light years. Dozens of different patterns suggested dozens of different species. An entire galaxy of intelligent life had grown and spread while humanity slept beneath the mountains of a forgotten world. She should have felt joy. She should have felt hope. But something in the data troubled her. There was no signal from Earth. No human transmissions. No automated beacons. No signs that anyone had survived outside the Ark. The planet above was silent, and when Elara checked the geological surveys, she understood why. Earth was dead. The continents had shifted, the oceans had changed, and whatever had existed on the surface was now buried under layers of rock and time. The Ark had survived because it was built to survive anything, but everything else was gone. Humanity existed only here, in this vault, in these 10,000 sleeping souls. Elara felt the weight of that truth pressing down on her. She was no longer just a commander. She was the leader of the last humans in existence. Every decision she made from this moment forward would determine whether her species lived or died. She began the revival sequence for the senior staff. One by one, her officers woke from their long sleep. gasping and coughing and struggling to understand what had happened. Dr. Chun was first, then Engineer Kowalski, then Lieutenant Commander Reyes. Each one listened to Alara's briefing with growing disbelief. 50,000 years, Chun whispered. Everyone we knew is dust. Everything we built is gone. Not everything, Alara said. We are still here. The Ark is still here. And out there, the galaxy is full of life. We have a chance to start again. Kowalski shook his head slowly. But what kind of life? What if they are hostile? What if they see us as invaders or threats? Then we will show them who we are, Alara replied. We will show them that humans do not give up. We survived our sun trying to kill us. We survived 50,000 years of darkness. We can survive whatever comes next. She turned back to the console and began preparing a message. If there were other species out there, they needed to know that humanity still existed. They needed to know that Earth had not died completely. But before she could transmit, an alarm blared through the vault. Something had detected them. Something was coming. On the screen, Alara watched as a ship appeared in orbit around the dead Earth. Its design was strange and angular, covered in patterns that glowed with unknown energy. It was scanning the planet, searching for something. Searching for them. What do we do? Reyes asked, fear creeping into his voice. Alara watched the alien ship for a long moment. This was the first contact humanity had ever made with another species, and it was happening in the worst possible circumstances. They were weak, outnumbered, and trapped in a vault with nowhere to run. But running had never been the human way. We answer them, Alara said. We tell them who we are and why we are here. And we pray they are friendly. She pressed the transmit button and spoke the first words humanity had spoken to the galaxy in 50,000 years. This is Commander Alara Vance of the Earth Ark program. We are human. We have been sleeping for a very long time. We mean you no harm, and we request peaceful contact. The message flew upward to rock and soil and atmosphere, racing toward the alien ship at the speed of light. Alara held her breath and waited for a response. The galaxy had forgotten about humanity. It had written them off as extinct, as nothing more than a footnote in the history of the cosmos. But humanity was awake now, and they were ready to remind the galaxy what it meant to be human. The response came 3 minutes later, and nothing would ever be the same again. Ambassador Kethra had seen many strange things in her 300 years of service to the collective. She had witnessed the fall of empires and the birth of new species. She had negotiated treaties that ended wars lasting centuries. She had spoken with beings of pure energy and creatures that lived in the hearts of dying stars. Nothing surprised her anymore. Until today. Her forearms moved gracefully across the control panel of the patrol vessel Vigilance as she studied the impossible readings. The ship's sensors insisted that there was a transmission coming from Sector 7G, the region the collective had labeled a dead zone. Nothing lived there. Nothing had lived there for 40,000 years. Ambassador, her aide called out. The analysis is complete. The language in the transmission matches no known species in our database. That is impossible, Kethra replied. We have cataloged every species in this region of the galaxy. There are no unknowns. With respect, Ambassador, there is one match, but it cannot be correct. Kethra walked to the aid station and looked at the screen. Her elegant face, with its silver skin and large violet eyes, showed no emotion, but inside she felt something she had not felt in decades. Fear. Humans, she whispered. The database says these are humans. The collective knew of humans only through ancient records. They had been a primitive species on a small planet orbiting an unstable star. When collective scouts had first surveyed the region 40,000 years ago, they had found only a dead world burned and lifeless. its dominant species apparently extinct before achieving interstellar travel. Humans were footnotes in history books. They were examples used to teach young diplomats about species that failed to survive. They were supposed to be dead. Set course for the signal origin, Kethra commanded, and send a priority message to the High Council. Tell them we may have a protocol of uncertainty situation. The crew stared at her in shock. The protocol of uncertainty had not been invoked in 6,000 years. It was reserved for events that the collective's predictive systems could not. Model true unknowns that threatened the stability of galactic civilization. The vigilance jumped to faster than light speeds and crossed the void in moments. When they emerged, Kethra saw the dead planet hanging in space like a gray and brown marble. And there, rising from its surface, was a ship. It was ugly by galactic standards. Sharp angles and exposed machinery covered its hull. Primitive fusion engines burned at its rear, pushing it slowly toward open space. It looked like something from a museum, a relic from an age before proper starship design had been standardized. But it was moving. It was alive. "Hail them," Kethra ordered. The communication screen flickered, and then Kethra found herself looking at a creature she had only seen in ancient images. It had soft skin and small eyes and a mouth that moved strangely when it spoke. It was covered in some kind of fabric, and its single pair of arms hung at its sides. "This is Commander Alara Vance," the creature said. "We are human. Please identify yourself." Kethra took a moment to compose herself. In all her years of diplomacy, she had never felt so unprepared. "I am Ambassador Kethra of the Volthari species, representing the Galactic Collective. We received your transmission and came to investigate. Our records indicate your species went extinct 40,000 years ago. How is this possible?" The human made a sound that the translator flagged as laughter. "We did not go extinct. We went to sleep. Our star was dying, so we built shelters deep underground and waited for the danger to pass. We have just woken up." Kethra processed this information with growing amazement. These beings had survived their own apocalypse through sheer stubbornness. They had refused to die even when the universe itself seemed determined to kill them. "You slept for 40,000 years?" she asked. 50,000, actually. Your records must be outdated." The ambassador exchanged glances with her crew. This was unprecedented. Species did not simply return from extinction. The rules of the galaxy did not allow for such things. "Commander Vance," Kethra said carefully, "I must inform you that much has changed while you slept. The galaxy is now governed by the Collective, an alliance of 3,000 species. There are also other powers, including the hegemony, who may not welcome your return. You are entering a complicated political situation." "We understand," the human replied. "We are not looking for trouble. We only want to find a place where our people can live in peace. Can you help us?" Kethra considered the request. By collective law, she had the authority to grant provisional asylum to refugees. But these were not ordinary refugees. These were an anomaly, a variable that no one had accounted for. "I can bring you to the collective central hub," she said finally. "You can make your case to the High Council there. But I must warn you, not everyone will be pleased to see you. Your existence challenges things that many species believe to be true." "We are used to challenges," Vance said. "Lead the way, Ambassador." The human ship fell in behind the Vigilance, and together they began the journey toward the center of galactic civilization. During the voyage, Kethra spent hours studying the humans through the ship's sensors. What she found disturbed her deeply. They were remarkably adaptable. Their bodies could survive temperatures that would kill most species. They could eat almost anything organic. They healed from injuries at an alarming rate. And their minds worked in ways the Collective had never seen before. Most galactic species thought in straight lines. They saw a problem, identified a solution, and implemented it. Humans thought in spirals and circles, jumping from idea to idea, making connections that seemed random but somehow produced results. The collective's predictive algorithms could not model human thinking because human thinking did not follow predictable patterns. Kethra sent a private message to the High Council. I have made contact with the humans. They appear peaceful, but I recommend extreme caution. These beings do not think like us. They do not act like us. They survived extinction through methods we would consider impossible. They are unpredictable in ways that concern me. Do they pose a threat? The council asked. Kethra thought about the question for a long time before answering. I do not know, and that is what frightens me. When they arrived at the collective central hub, 1,000 ships surrounded them. Representatives from hundreds of species had gathered to see the impossible creatures who had returned from the dead. News of the humans had spread across the galaxy at the speed of light, and everyone wanted to witness this moment. Commander Vance stood at the viewport of her ship and looked out at the assembled fleets. She was a small creature on a primitive vessel, surrounded by the most advanced civilizations in the known universe. But she did not look afraid. She looked ready. The galaxy had forgotten about humanity for 50,000 years. Now they would remember. The Great Hall of the Collective stretched for miles in every direction. Its ceiling disappeared into artificial clouds, and its walls were covered with the flags and symbols of 3,000 member species. Floating platforms carried diplomats and observers from every corner of the galaxy. All of them gathered to witness something that had never happened before. The return of an extinct species. Commander Alara Vance walked toward the central stage with her head held high. Around her, aliens of every shape and size watched with curiosity and fear and wonder. Some had scales and others had feathers. Some floated in anti-gravity fields and others slithered along the ground. The diversity was overwhelming, but Alara refused to show weakness. She was humanity's representative. She would speak for 10,000 souls and the memory of billions more. The High Council sat on elevated thrones above the stage. There were 12 of them, each representing a major power within the collective. Their species were ancient and powerful, and they looked down at Alara like teachers examining a child who had wandered into their classroom. You claim to be human, the lead counselor said. His voice boomed through the hall, translated into 100 languages simultaneously. Our records say humans died when their star expanded. How do you explain your presence here? We built shelters underground, Alara replied. We put ourselves into a deep sleep and waited for 50,000 years. The ARC program saved 10,000 of us. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. The idea was simple, but the execution was beyond anything most species could imagine. 50,000 years of perfect preservation required technology and determination that the collective had never seen. Impressive, another counselor admitted. But why have you come to us? What do you want? We want to survive, Alara said. Our homeworld is dead, and we have nowhere else to go. We ask only for a place to rebuild, a corner of the galaxy where we can start again. The counselors exchanged glances. Their expressions were unreadable, but Alara sensed that something was wrong. The crowd seemed nervous, and several delegates were whispering urgently to each other. Your request is not unreasonable, the lead counselor said slowly. However, there are complications. The galaxy has changed greatly since your species was last active. There are rules and protocols that must be followed. And there are other powers who may have opinions about your return. As if on cue, a new platform descended from above. On it stood creatures unlike any Alara had seen. They were tall and armored, with forearms ending in sharp claws. Their eyes glowed red, and their mouths were filled with teeth designed for tearing flesh. Everything about them screamed predator. The hegemony, Ambassador Kethra whispered from behind Alara. "Be very careful." The lead hegemony representative stepped forward and smiled in a way that was not friendly at all. "So these are the famous humans," he said. "The primitives who refuse to die. We have heard much about you since your awakening. The hegemony is curious about what you might offer us." Alara did not flinch. "We offer nothing to those who treat us as inferiors. We seek partners, not masters." The hegemony representative laughed. "Bold words from the last survivors of a dead world. You have no ships, no weapons, no allies. You are refugees begging for scraps. And yet, you speak to us as equals?" "I speak as a human," Ilara replied. "That is all I have ever been." The exchange sent a shock through the hall. No one spoke to the hegemony with such defiance. Their empire controlled a quarter of the known galaxy, and their military had crushed dozens of species who dared to oppose them. But Alara did not care about politics or power. She cared about her people. "Before we continue," she said, turning to address the entire hall, "I have questions of my own. When we studied your databases, we found references to species we once observed from Earth. We would like to know what happened to them." The counselors shifted uncomfortably. "What species?" "The Drethkai. Our astronomers detected their signals 500 years before we went to sleep." "Where are they now?" Silence fell over the hall. Finally, Kethra spoke softly. "The Drethkai were destroyed by the hegemony 8,000 years ago. They resisted conquest and were eliminated." Alara felt ice in her veins. "And the Luminari?" "We detected their beacon as well. The Luminari chose to isolate themselves. They stopped advancing, stopped growing. Eventually, they faded away. The Kreth? Absorbed into the collective. They gave up their independence for protection. The Valorum? Conquered by the hegemony. The Eryxian Federacy? Collapsed from internal conflicts." Alara's hands trembled with barely contained rage. Every species humanity had once hoped to meet was gone. Every potential friend was dead or broken or absorbed. The galaxy was not a community of equals. It was a graveyard where the powerful feasted on the weak. "I understand now," she said, and her voice carried through the silent hall. "You are not an alliance. You are a machine for destroying anything that threatens your power. Species either submit or they die. There is no room for those who want to be free." The lead counselor leaned forward. "You speak harshly, human. The collective maintains peace and stability. Without us, the galaxy would fall into chaos." "Peace built on graves is not peace," Alara replied. "Stability maintained through fear is not stability. You have created a galaxy of survivors, not a galaxy of life." The hegemony representative stepped closer, his claws clicking against the floor. "Enough of this. The human speaks as if she has a choice. She does not. The hegemony makes this offer once. Submit to our authority, and your species will be permitted to exist. Refuse, and you will be catalogued as extinct permanently this time." Alara looked at the monster before her. She saw the power in his armor and the threat in his eyes. She understood that her people were weak and alone and had almost no chance of survival. But she also remembered something important. Humans had faced extinction before. They had stared into the dying light of their own sun and refused to surrender. They had buried themselves in the earth and waited 50,000 years for another chance. They had not done all that just to kneel before aliens who saw them as nothing. "We have already been extinct once," Alara said, and she smiled. "It did not take." Gasps echoed through the great hall. The hegemony representative snarled with fury. But Alara stood her ground, because that was what humans did. That was what humans had always done. They stood, and they refused to break. 3 years had passed since humanity's awakening, and the galaxy had changed more than anyone expected. Commander Elara Vance stood on the bridge of the Defiance, flagship of the growing human fleet. Outside the viewport, dozens of ships moved in formation, not all of them human. Vessels of strange design flew alongside the crude human craft, their crews working together in ways the collective had never imagined. The alliance had begun with the Remnari, a species the collective had declared failed centuries ago. They were small and weak by galactic standards, but they had refused to disappear completely. When they heard of the humans who had defied the hegemony in the Great Hall, they sent a message. "We believe in you. How can we help?" Then came the Verkith, survivors of a species the hegemony had supposedly eliminated. They had hidden in the asteroid belts of dead systems, waiting for a chance to fight back. The humans gave them that chance. Then the Solani, the Krix, the Hollow Ones. Species written off as extinct or failed or worthless. Species that the great powers had forgotten but who had never stopped dreaming of freedom. They came to humanity because humanity offered something the galaxy had not seen in millennia. Hope? Fleet Commander, Lieutenant Reyes called out from his station. We had incoming contacts. 14 ships bearing hegemony signatures. Elara felt her heart rate increase, but kept her voice calm. My battle stations. Signal all ships to form defensive positions. The hegemony had finally decided to make good on their threat. For 3 years, they had watched humanity grow stronger, watched them gather allies and recover technology. The humans had found old weapons in their arc designs the galaxy had abandoned as inefficient or dangerous. They had built new ships using methods the collective considered primitive, but which worked far better than anyone expected. Now the hegemony had come to end the human problem, once and for all. 14 warships dropped out of faster-than-light travel and arranged themselves in attack formation. Each one was a masterpiece of military engineering, bristling with weapons capable of destroying moons. Against them, the human alliance had 23 ships, most of them converted freighters and ancient cruisers, held together with hope and determination. Incoming transmission, the communications officer announced. The screen flickered, and the Hegemony War Commander appeared. He was even larger than the representative Elara had faced in the Great Hall, and his armor was covered with the symbols of conquered species. Humans, he growled, you have been given time to reconsider your foolish defiance. This is your final opportunity to surrender. Accept hegemony rule, and some of you may be permitted to survive as servants. Refuse, and we will burn you from existence. Elara looked at her crew. She saw fear in their eyes, but also something else. She saw trust. They believed in her, believed in humanity, believed that they could face impossible odds and somehow survive. Let me tell you something about humans, Elara said to the war commander. When our sun tried to kill us, we built shelters and survived. When the galaxy forgot about us, we waited and survived. When you told us to kneel, we stood and survived. You think 14 ships will be enough to destroy us? She leaned forward, and her eyes burned with defiance. You are going to need more ships. The transmission ended, and battle began. Hegemony vessels opened fire with weapons designed to crack planets. Energy beams and missiles, and things that had no name in human languages screamed across the void. The human alliance ships scattered, moving in patterns that seemed chaotic but were actually carefully planned. Launch fighters, Elara commanded. From the Defiance and 3 other carriers, hundreds of small craft poured into space. They were based on designs from humanity's original space program, updated with new technology but still recognizable. Fast, agile, and piloted by crews who had nothing left to lose. The hegemony had not encountered firecraft in centuries. Their ships were designed to fight other capital vessels, not swarms of tiny attackers. The human pilots exploited this weakness ruthlessly, targeting weapon systems and engine ports and communication arrays. Concentrate fire on the lead ship. Alara ordered. All batteries, full power. The combined firepower of the Alliance fleet struck the Hegemony flagship. Its shields flared and flickered under the assault. The ship was still powerful, still deadly, but it was taking damage. They are adjusting their formation, Reyes reported. They are trying to protect their flanks. Then we hit them from above. Signal the Virkith squadron to execute Maneuver 7. The Virkith ships, small and quick, and filled with warriors who had waited generations for this moment, dove toward the Hegemony fleet from an unexpected angle. Their weapons were outdated by galactic standards, but they had been modified with human ingenuity. Plasma bolts tore through Hegemony armor. The battle raged for 11 minutes. When it was over, 9 Hegemony ships drifted helplessly in space, their crews captured by human boarding parties. 5 Hegemony ships had been destroyed completely. The human alliance had lost 7 vessels, but those crews had known the risks and had chosen to fight anyway. War Commander, Alara broadcast to the captured flagship. Your forces have been defeated. Your ships belong to us now. Your crews will be treated with dignity and offered a choice, imprisonment or service in the free worlds. The war commander appeared on screen, his face twisted with disbelief and rage. This is impossible. You are primitives. You cannot defeat the Hegemony. And yet we have, Alara replied. Tell your masters what happened here. Tell them that humanity does not surrender, does not submit, does not die. We remember what it means to fight for survival, and we will teach the galaxy to remember as well. The transmission ended, and the human alliance began the work of securing their prisoners and repairing their ships. It was a small victory in a vast galaxy, but it was a beginning. Within hours, news of the battle spread across thousands of worlds. Species that had accepted collective rule for millennia began to whisper. Species that had surrendered to the hegemony began to wonder if resistance was possible. And across 10,000 worlds, a single transmission played on repeat. It was Commander Vance's voice, translated into every known language. We are humanity. We do not conquer. We do not submit. We remember. And we are no longer sleeping. The message spread like fire, igniting hope in places that had known only fear for centuries. The galaxy had believed that defiance was impossible, that the old powers would rule forever. Humanity had proven them wrong, and this was only the beginning. 10 years had passed since humanity awoke from their long sleep, and the galaxy would never be the same. President Alara Vance, she still found the title. Strange stood on the surface of New Terra and watched the sunset paint the sky in shades of orange and purple. This world had been a barren rock when humanity first claimed it, dead and empty and forgotten. Now it bloomed with life. Forests grew where there had been only stone. Rivers flowed where there had been only dust. Cities rose toward the clouds, their towers filled with humans in Ramnari and Virkith, and a dozen other species who had found a home in the free world's compact. Behind her, children played in a garden filled with flowers from 100 different planets. Human children ran alongside Solani young and Krix hatchlings, their laughter mixing together in a sound that Alara had never expected to hear. Life, real, genuine, hopeful life. President Vance, her aide called out. The diplomatic delegation has arrived. Alara turned and walked toward the landing pad. A shuttle was descending from orbit, bearing the marks of the Collective High Council. This meeting had been arranged months ago, but Alara still felt nervous. The last decade had been filled with conflict and change, and today would determine whether that change led to peace or more war. The shuttle landed and its doors opened. Ambassador Kethra was the first to step out, her silver skin glowing in the evening light. Behind her came representatives from a dozen council species, their faces showing a mixture of respect and uncertainty. "President Vance," Kethra said, bowing slightly. "Thank you for receiving us." "Ambassador," Alara replied with a nod. "It has been too long since we spoke in person. I trust your journey was pleasant?" "It was educational. We passed through 3 systems that were collective territory 10 years ago. They are now part of your Free Worlds Compact. The change is remarkable." Alara gestured toward the city. "Would you like to see more? I think you will find that our vision for the galaxy is different from what you expected." They walked together through streets filled with beings of every shape and size. Shops sold goods from across the galaxy, and restaurants served food from hundreds of different worlds. Everywhere they looked, species that had once been enemies or strangers now lived side by side. "How do you maintain order?" one of the council representatives asked. "These species have conflicting needs, different biologies, ancient grudges. How do you prevent them from destroying each other?" "We do not prevent anything," Alara explained. "We simply offer a choice. Species can join the free worlds and live by our simple rules. No conquest, no slavery, no forced assimilation. Those who accept these rules are welcome. Those who reject them are free to go elsewhere. But what if someone violates the rules? Then the rest of us respond together. Not to punish, but to protect. The strong defend the weak, and the weak contribute what they can. Everyone has value, and everyone has a voice." Kethra listened carefully. "This is very different from the collective's approach. We maintain stability through regulation and control. Your system seems chaotic by comparison." "Perhaps," Alara admitted. "But chaos is not always bad. Sometimes, chaos is just another word for freedom. And freedom is what allows species to grow and change and become more than they were." They continued walking until they reached a memorial at the center of the city. It was a simple structure, a black stone pillar surrounded by a garden of flowers. On the pillar were carved the names of every species known to have gone extinct in the last 100,000 years. Thousands of names. Thousands of lights that had been snuffed out. "We built this to remember," Alara said softly. "Not just to mourn, but to remind ourselves why we fight. Every name on this stone represents a people who had dreams and hopes and families. They deserve better than to be forgotten." Kethra studied the memorial with ancient eyes. "The collective maintains records of extinct species, but we do not honor them this way. We see extinction as natural, as the price of evolution." "That is where we differ," Alara replied. "We do not believe any species deserves to vanish. We believe every light in the galaxy should have a chance to shine." The council delegation spent 3 days on New Terra. They saw schools where children of different species learned together. They saw hospitals where human doctors treated alien patients using techniques combining the best of galactic medicine. They saw factories where workers of a dozen races built ships designed by engineers from a dozen more. They saw something the collective had never imagined: genuine cooperation without conquest or control. On the final day, Kethra requested a private meeting with President Vance. "I must be honest with you," the ambassador said. "When we first found you, I thought you were a mistake, an anomaly that would quickly be corrected. I thought the hegemony would destroy you, or the collective would absorb you. I was wrong. You were not alone in that thinking," Alara replied. "Many people expected us to fail, but you did not fail. You built something new, something the galaxy has not seen in millennia. You have given hope to species who had forgotten what hope felt like." Kethra paused, and Alara saw something unexpected in her violet eyes: admiration. "The collective council is fracturing," Kethra continued. Younger species are questioning the old ways. They see what you have built, and they want to be part of it. The hegemony has retreated to its core territories, afraid of further losses. The balance of power is shifting. Is that why you came? Alara asked. To negotiate? I came to understand. And now I do. Kethra smiled an expression Alara had never seen on a Velthri face. We thought you were an anomaly, President Vance. But you are something far more dangerous. You are an example. And examples change everything. The ambassador extended one of her 4 hands. I would like to propose formal diplomatic relations between the collective and the Free Worlds Compact. Not as rulers and subjects, but as equals. I think we have much to learn from each other. Alara took the offered hand. I would like that very much. That evening, after the delegation departed, Alara stood once more on the surface of New Terra and watched the stars emerge. Each point of light represented a world, a possibility, a future. Behind her, she heard footsteps. Kethra had returned alone. I have one more question, the ambassador said. We thought you were an anomaly, a mistake of probability. How do you explain your survival? How did humanity endure when so many others failed? Alara thought about the question for a long time. She remembered the Ark, the long sleep, the awakening. She remembered standing defiant before the hegemony, fighting battles against impossible odds, building alliances from the ashes of forgotten species. We are not stronger than other species, she finally said. We are not smarter or more advanced. But we have one thing that seems to be rare in this galaxy. What is that? Stubbornness. We refuse to stay dead. No matter how many times the universe tries to end us, we keep waking up. Kethra laughed a sound like silver bells. Then the galaxy should be grateful, because you did not just wake yourselves. You woke all of us. Alara smiled and looked up at the stars. Humanity had not conquered the galaxy. They had done something far more important. They had reminded it that survival was not about being the strongest or the oldest. It was about refusing to give up, refusing to surrender, refusing to let the darkness win. And as long as even one human heart still beat, that stubborn light would never go out.